Hey, what's up? My name's Kevin. I am the Helpful Hero, here to help you leverage the awesome power of the HubSpot CMS. In today's video, we're going to talk about my favorite module. Of course, that is the Magic module, and I'm going to show you a really cool technique that's going to allow you to do, well, what I've done on my very own homepage, utilizing the parallax elements, cool little animated gradients, different layers and all kinds of good stuff. And what we're talking about is, well, this right here, my new homepage. And so what I'm going to work through with you is how to set this up so you can leverage the animated gradients. You could do a technique where you can have an image poking outside of its container or its row. And then also this little parallax element. If you can see that, the image actually moves kind of up the screen at a different pace as someone scrolls. So we're going to talk about that as well. Before I jump into this quick tutorial, I have a shameless plug. If you have not checked out my new product, awesome.ai, you got to check it out. We just soft launched it, meaning anyone can sign up. It's still in beta, but it is cool. I've been using it, giving it videos so that if you have any questions about Clean Pro, it'll actually answer you. It'll even give you some of the videos that I've been creating. At any rate, it is yours to use, and we have a free 30-day trial if you want to sign up, kick the tires, and just check it out. Okay, let's go ahead and jump into this tutorial. And the first thing that we're going to do is I'm just going to dissect this page a little bit so that you can see how it's currently structured. So if we jump into the CMS, I'm going to poke around in this module. The first thing that you do need to know is these two are two separate modules, both using the Magic module. And so if we click into this top bit, a couple quick things to point out is it is set to 2 columns, and we have the column arrangement set to 7-5. Let's go back over here. If we go into column 1, you can see, well, actually I need to give these a name, but if we jump into one of them, we can see how we have the main headline, "Hey, I'm Kevin," set up as the content element in 1. Right under this, if we jump over it, you can see I have the rotating text set up right here. And then the third option is where I have this text as another content element using the rich text editor. And then last but not least, I have the buttons CTA, where I'm actually aligning these 2 buttons up with various CTAs. So that's in column 1. Now if we quickly jump over to, column 2, you can see right here, I can actually give this a name, image. Here is that image of myself that's actually cut out, so it has a transparent background. And that is one important thing if you want to pull off an effect like this. Now, if we go over to the Styles tab, I'm making large use of the Row Settings tab. This is where I am actually giving it the background color of a gradient with an animation and a bunch of other settings that we're going to go through in detail once we start building this out together. So let's go ahead and open up a brand new page. I went ahead and just plopped in a Magic module right from the sidebar so that we can work through this from the ground up. So the first thing we want to do when we come in here is let's just go ahead and make sure it's set to 2 columns, and we're going to make that column arrangement 7-5. Apply changes here. That looks good so far. And the next thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and go into column 1. Now I'm not going to add the exact same text as I have on my homepage, but this is essentially what I would do. So I would do headline H1, and then I'm just going to cut this, the Magic module, and we're just going to go ahead and select H1, apply changes. And now what we want to do is I want to come over here and add, and this will be our rotating text. Again, you can name it anything you want. I'm being a little redundant with what's down here for clarity's sake. But do whatever is going to make it easy for you to reference when you're looking at all the content elements in the column. So the first thing is for the text style, we already have an H1, so we would not want to repeat that. So I would do something like, let's just, H3 might be a little big. Anyways, we'll just do an H3. So we want to say the Magic module is, And then we're gonna rotate through. Awesome, rad, dope, pretty, sweet. Cool. The way that this works is you basically just want to utilize a comma through any of the rotating text elements. Now I'm gonna go ahead and hit apply changes. The one thing about some of these features that's important to know is that we actually need to go under the start here option to turn it on. So something just to be aware of. So if we want to come right back over here and go under start here, this is super helpful and can kind of trip you up sometimes. So we want to make sure that we come in here and turn on the rotating text animation option. This is here so that if you're not using a feature, it's not loading a bunch of unnecessary JavaScript making your page heavier. So yes, a little confusing, but well worth its weight when it comes to making sure that your pages are working awesome. Okay, let's go back up to content column 1 and add in that little text. So in this case, I'm just gonna go ahead and keep this text and we'll say paragraph text. Apply those changes. Cool, that looks great. The last thing we want to add are our buttons. So I'll just call this buttons and then we'll look for the buttons right here. Now, in my previous example, I was utilizing a HubSpot CTA, which would just be this selection. Just to save a little bit of time here, I'm just gonna go ahead and use a standard button just to make things a little bit easier. So we wanted 2 buttons. Our first button, we'll just do something like, you're awesome. And then I can select a button style right here. And I want this one to be primary, and maybe this one is going to go to a content page of awesome AI because it's awesome. Hit apply changes just to see how that looks. And cool, we got 1 button. And so what we'd want to do is we would actually want to come in and do the other button. And let's say like something like learn more. In this case, we wouldn't want it to have quite the visual weight. So I would maybe do like a secondary button. Let's see if I have my button styles kind of, it's a light gray. It'll suffice for now. And of course I would come down here and add another link to whatever page. So column 1, that's done. That looks great. Now let's go ahead and bounce over to column 2. So here, what we're gonna do is we're gonna basically grab a image content element. So I'll just do something like my hero image, and then select that, jump on over, and then I already have my image cut out right here. And then that's pretty much it for this part. Generally, one thing to know about image loading is if the image like this is above the fold, meaning it needs to load right when the page loads, you'll want to put this on eager. It doesn't need to lazy load. It's only the images below the fold that really need to be lazy loaded in. So let's go ahead and hit apply changes and see kind of where we're at. Okay, cool. So we got a lot of our content in shape. Now we got to bring the background to life. So let's go under the styles tab. And the first thing that we want to do is we want to come into the row settings because that's where we're going to set the background gradient. So right here under background type, we're going to do gradients. And then let me just pick a few random blues just to make this a little easy. Maybe we'll do that kind of purpley color. And let's do maybe a lighter blue. And we'll just do one more. Let's do this one. So one thing to note whenever you're using a gradient animation is I highly recommend using top left to bottom right or the reverse. When the gradients are going diagonally, it tends to look and work a lot better. So just something to keep in mind. Certainly play with all these other ones, but I find this works the best. So cool, let's turn the animated gradient on. And then I had it set to a lower speed. Well, I guess a higher speed. Basically, this slider represents how fast the animation is going to cycle through. So the lower the seconds, the faster it's going to cycle through. The higher the seconds, the slower. So let's just go ahead and hit apply changes and see how all this looks. Okay, cool. It's getting there. Obviously, this black text doesn't look great. So as we're kind of just iterating on this, I would go back to the content, go back to column 1, and then just go ahead and kind of hit these. So I'll select that. I'll change this to white. And I'm a big fan of the dark editor. And then we're just gonna go through these other ones. With the rotating text, there's actually an option to use custom text color. So I can basically come in here and say the beginning text, I want white, and the color of the rotating text, I'm just gonna keep it white, just for consistency's sake. You can change it to some like special color if you wanted to. And now we're gonna go ahead and go to the next one, and I'll just go ahead and select white for this as well and apply changes. I'm gonna leave the buttons alone. No need to go into the theme settings for this tutorial. So now we can see the gradient working in the background. It actually looks pretty cool. Like I dig it, I dig it. Now what we wanna do is we actually wanna just get myself or my photo anchored to the bottom, my head peeking out, and this aligned and looking good. So now what we wanna do is we wanna pop back into the module and go back into the row settings. Now this is where you're gonna have to play with it a little bit, and you're gonna see what I mean right now. So first, if we go under spacing options, there's a couple things to take into consideration. So we are looking at the row right now. And the reason why I'm getting cut off right here at the bottom is because there is padding, this padding that's basically providing us this space. So if I just remove that padding and hit apply changes, you're gonna see I'm gonna anchor to the bottom right off the bat. Now, of course, we're still gonna wanna do that for the tablet experience as well, just to be on the safe side. So now that's actually looking pretty good. So we might come back and revisit these settings a little bit later, but for now, I think it actually looks pretty good, and we can kind of move on to some of the other settings to make this actually all work out. So let's go to design extras. And the one thing that we want to do is we want to add that cool little rounded corners. So let's just go ahead and do apply changes so we can see the border radius start to take shape right there. Now, as you can see, I actually want a little bit of white space on either of these sides. And this is a really great point of why you might want to jump back and forth. So because that's kind of what we're looking for, what we would want to do is we would want to go back into the spacing, but this time we want to actually play with the margin above and below. And so in this case, I'll maybe give it, you know what, let's give it 50. I'm usually a fan of like right around the 50 pixels. We'll give it 50 above and 50 below. That's gonna give us a little bit of more room to work. So definitely keep in mind that that's an option you're gonna wanna play with. So now that we got that looking pretty good, the next thing we wanna work on is getting my head peeking out of the frame right here. So before we do that, let's just go ahead and check this out one more time. This is a hidden little feature. So it says show items pulled out of the row, which is exactly what we're about to do. So we would want to flip this little feature right on and apply changes so we can actually get it to look right. Now what we're gonna do is we actually wanna come to the column setting in order to get my head peeking out. So I would come into this column setting, I would go into column 2, and in this case, I'm gonna do a couple things. The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come under the spacing, and I wanna give it what's called a negative margin. And this is a little bit of a hidden feature, but it's like super cool and you can get really crafty with it. So in this case, let's see what happens if I give it a negative 50 pixel margin and hit apply changes. Okay, so it looked like there was probably some space to account for there, which is why it made it a little bit of the way. But let's just go ahead and try 100 and see how this looks. Cool, so now we're actually getting, me to pop out of the frame here. Now, of course, as you can see, a lot of this content is riding pretty close, right? Like that doesn't look super awesome. So what we would wanna do is we'd actually wanna come into the column 1 settings, and this is where we can give this area some spacing above and below. And in this case, we would wanna utilize the padding. Well, technically we could use margin if we really wanted to, but let's just go ahead and give this 50 padding top and 50 padding bottom and see what happens. Cool, it's actually starting to look pretty good. Obviously, we have a little bit of a course correction to make right here, which I'll show you in just one moment. But all in all, this actually is seemingly pretty good. So here we're gonna go back to our column number 2. And I do realize that I'm jumping around a lot. And that's why it's super important for you to understand where a lot of the options are within the Magic module so that as you're working through a design, you can be iterative in this way. And so, for example, what's happening right now is because we have the vertical alignment of the content set to its default, which basically is the top. In this case, I don't want to default the image of the image to the bottom. So I just click bottom, apply changes, and now I'm gonna anchor more towards the bottom. Now, of course, again, I lost a little bit of that spacing around my head, so we wanna kind of go work through and figure out what is actually creating that space. For the most part, we already have our 100% negative, 100 pixel negative margin set. So it's likely that this has to do with some row spacing. So I would go check the row settings and look for the spacing right here and see, okay, what is causing that? And I can see right here, it is the padding above my head, which we did not address that first time around. It was kind of my bad. So I just delete that, probably do it for tablet as well, apply changes, and now I'm gonna go ahead and see myself jump up out of that frame. So I got my hair peeking out. It actually looks pretty good. Okay, let's go ahead and just move on because I think you got the point here to that big image below so we can get the parallax element working and then wrap this tutorial up. So let's go ahead and we're gonna grab another magic module and I'll drop that right here. And in this magic module, I'm actually only gonna use one column. So that's totally cool. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come back under start here, and I'm gonna turn on use element parallax because that is the feature that we're gonna actually utilize for this. So now we'll go to the content column 1. Of course, we wanna add an image. So we'll say big image. We'll select image as our content element. And then we're gonna go ahead and grab, let's see if I can find that big image. Where is it? This big image right here. We're gonna grab that. And let's just go ahead and see what it looks like by just adding it in. Cool, okay. So we have a little bit of spacing to clear up because we really want that to move as it animates. So the first thing that we're gonna do is we're going to come over to the Styles tab under Row Settings, Spacing Options, and let's just get rid of this. For good measure, we'll get rid of that, and we'll just do the same thing for tablet. Apply those changes just so we can kind of see that get a little closer. Cool. Now we want to go back to the Content tab and go back into our content elements. And this is where we actually want to come down to the animations. And there is a type of animation called Parallax Elements that is going to open up a cool little slider here. Before we mess with the slider, I always like to see like what's gonna happen when I actually just turn it on. Now, as you can see, subtly, as I scroll up and down the page, this space tightens up a little bit. And so what you can actually do is you can speed this up. So let's just say, okay, we're going a little crazy. Let's just go to 2.4. Whoa, not up, let's go. Come on, HubSpot, what's going on? Okay, 2.4, let's see what that does. A point goes a long way, so just be mindful of that. So now we're actually getting that to slide quite nice. So let's go ahead and preview in a new tab. Always preview in a new tab. It's gonna make such a big difference. Okay, so a couple things. Obviously, that doesn't look super awesome. We need to get some space above there, but let's just check our parallax element. And it's actually working. You can kind of see it right there. I could probably go up a speed, but you get the point. Like it's actually starting to work and look pretty cool. So let's go ahead and bring this home and do two more quick things with the alignment on this section right here. And let's make sure that you can actually see my eyes. And then we will close this bad boy out. So let's go into the Styles tab again. Now we're gonna go under row settings, spacing around content, and we wanna do a margin above. This time I'm just gonna do something like 150 pixels, which seems a little crazy right here, but if we jump over here, let's just see how it looks. Okay, now we're already starting to get somewhere. Granted, I could make this transparent in the nav. That's a different tutorial. We're not gonna worry about that. But let's talk about this text right over here because we want this aligned nice in the center. And what we'd want to do is we'd actually wanna come back to our column number 1 and use that vertical alignment option that I showed you a moment ago. So under column settings, we go column 1, design extras, and then this one, we do a vertical alignment of center. And I can just go ahead and hit apply changes. It's not gonna look much in this view, but in this view, it starts to actually look a little bit better. And in this view, even better. And that is how you can start to really utilize the Magic module in a variety of ways to just really bring anything to life that you imagine for a page layout. And that's really what these tutorials are for. It's just to show you how versatile and flexible these modules are, especially the Magic module, so that you can really just let your imagination or your designer's imagination go wild and be able to build it without touching any code. With that, I'm out. If you have a request for any videos, feel free to drop me a comment below or in that little button if you are actually on my Clean Pro tutorials page, and I'll catch you in the next one. Later.